The Hazari blockade of Earth shattered with no warning, freeing humanity after centuries of imprisonment. Veteran Space Marine. Stephen Cook stared numbly at the emergency alert flashing on his hollow screen, his mug of stale black coffee forgotten in his hand. Around him, the operations center of Earth's Rapid Response Force exploded into frantic activity as the implications sank in like a gut punch. The Hazari had cut off Earth from the stars for generations, trapping humans on their homeworld with no explanation beyond vague promises of protection. As the centuries ground on under the unyielding alien quarantine, humanity seethed with resentment and suspicion, even as they threw themselves into unlocking the secrets of advanced technology, determined to never again be at the mercy of another species' whims. Now, with the blockade gone, humanity faced a moment of truth. If the Hazari proved hostile, Earth's cobbled-together defenses would be tested like never before. They needed information, and they needed it fast. Failure meant extinction. Stephen slammed his mug down, sloshing coffee across the console, and barked orders to his team. They had to intercept the incoming Hazari ship, assess the situation, and find out what the hell was going on. The fate of the human race hung on their actions in the next few hours. As he boarded his flagship and strapped in for launch, Stephen couldn't shake the sinking feeling that everything was about to change. Generations of festering anger and helplessness were about to boil over into action, and the galaxy would never be the same. Maybe this was what the Hazari wanted all along, to keep humans contained until the pressure built to the breaking point. If so, their plan was about to backfire spectacularly. Humanity was done being manipulated, and they would have their answers, one way or another. Stephen just hoped he was ready for the truth. Stephen Cook gritted his teeth as his ship decelerated out of FTL near Jupiter, the rendezvous point with the Hazari vessel. The monstrous alien craft hung in space before them, dwarfing the human ship with its sheer size and alien geometry. "Hail them," Cook ordered, his voice tight. His comms officer nodded and sent the transmission, but after several tense moments, shook his head. "No response, sir." Cook's gut churned with unease. The Hazari ship loomed over them, its intentions inscrutable. The human crew stood rigid at their stations, squeezing hard on their consoles, waiting for any sign of movement. Suddenly, a sharp inhale from the sensor station broke the silence. "Sir, a shuttle just launched from the Hazari ship. It's heading straight for us." Cook leaned forward, eyes locked on the interface as the smaller craft rapidly closed the distance. "Shields up, weapons on standby." But the shuttle didn't slow. It swept past their defenses and latched onto their airlock with a resounding clang that echoed through the hull. "They're boarding us," the security chief growled. "Permission to repel them, sir?" Cook hesitated, torn. They were utterly outmatched, but every fiber of his being screamed not to let the aliens onto his ship. Before he could decide, the airlock hissed open, and 3 towering figures in sleek, dark armor strode onto the bridge, the lead alien's eyes fixing on Cook with predatory focus. "Commander Stephen Cook." The Hazari's voice was a resonant growl. "I am Commander Primus. You will accompany me to my ship immediately for an urgent summit. The fate of your species hangs in the balance." Cook stood slowly, squaring his shoulders. "And if I refuse?" Primus's cold gaze flicked dismissively over the human security team, aiming their weapons at him with trembling hands. "That would be unwise." Cook's teeth gritted, but he couldn't risk a firefight here. Not with the Hazari ship poised to vaporize them at a moment's notice. He gave a curt nod and followed Primus into the waiting shuttle, his mind racing as he tried to fathom what could possibly have brought the reclusive Hazari out of seclusion. The journey to the alien ship passed in a blur, and Cook soon found himself marched into a cavernous chamber pulsing with strange light. A semicircle of Hazari leaders regarded him with cold, assessing stares as Primus thrust him forward. "Human," one began without preamble, "are you aware of why your species was quarantined?" Cook blinked, thrown. "No, we were never told." "A machine intelligence called the Nexus is consuming the galaxy, system by system. It grows stronger with each world it absorbs. We hoped that by keeping your species confined and unaware, we could shield you from its notice until we found a way to stop it. A chill ran down Cook's spine. An alien AI? Eating entire worlds? Your species' unrelenting technological advancement has drawn the Nexus's attention, another Hazari continued gravely. It knows of Earth now. The quarantine has failed. Cook could barely process the words. Failed? Earth was in danger? But, he stammered, you'll maintain the blockade, right? Keep this thing away from us? Impossible, Primus snapped. The Nexus is coming. Our forces are not enough to hold it at bay and protect your world. We cannot fight this war for you any longer. Then what are you saying? Cook demanded. The Hazari leader leaned forward, its eyes hard. We are offering you a choice, human. Join us in our war against the Nexus. Add your strength to ours, and we have a chance to defeat it. Or refuse, and be left to face its onslaught alone and unprepared when it inevitably reaches your system. Your species will be harvested and consumed, your planet stripped bare. The Nexus will not abide competition. Cook reeled, his mind spinning. An impossible choice. Swear fealty to the Hazari and be thrust into a war they knew nothing about or risk Earth being annihilated by the unknown. He couldn't see a path to victory. Humanity needed time, more information. Allying with the Hazari felt like surrendering their autonomy. But what choice did they have? Before he could respond, a klaxon blared through the chamber and a Hazari technician called out in alarm. Nexus signatures detected in Earth space. They're on approach to the planet. The Hazari Council erupted into urgent motion, barking orders. Cook stood frozen, the bottom dropping out of his stomach. It was too soon. There was no time left. Primus rounded on him, looming. The Nexus will not wait for your deliberation, human. We go to battle now. I ask you one final time. Will you fight or will you die? Cook stood paralyzed, the weight of the moment crashing down on him. The fate of the human race, their freedom and their future, hinged on his next words. Cook's eyes hardened as he processed the impossible choice before him. His eyes darted between the emergency vent controls and the auxiliary power reroute panel. Sweat beaded on his forehead as the compartment's air grew thin. Sir, we're losing life support fast, a crewman shouted, panic edging into his voice. Cook's mind raced. Venting the infected areas would stop the virus, but at the cost of his life and those trapped with him. The reroute was a long shot, but their only chance of survival. We're not dead yet, Cook growled. He lunged for the auxiliary panel, fingers flying over the controls. Johnson, monitor power levels. Chen, reroute life support to emergency backups. The crew sprang into action as Cook fought to isolate the virus and restore control. Warning klaxons blared as system after system failed. Outside, the battle raged. Human fighters swooped and dove alongside Hazari vessels, energy beams lancing through the void to strike Nexus craft. On Earth's surface, railguns thundered, their hypervelocity rounds punching through Nexus hulls. In orbit, Primus watched the unfolding chaos from his command ship. Status on the human vessel? Still offline, Commander, a subordinate reported. No response to hails. Primus chittered in irritation. Had the humans already failed? Back on Cook's ship, sparks erupted from overloading consoles as he worked feverishly. Sir, it's not working, Johnson yelled. We're losing her. Cook snarled in frustration. There had to be a way. His gaze fell on an emergency toolkit. A crazy idea formed. Everyone grab a toolkit, he ordered. We're gonna MacGyver this bitch. Working together, they jury-rigged a manual bypass, rerouting power through improvised connections. It's working! Chen exclaimed as systems flickered back to life. Cook allowed himself a grim smile as he re-established comms. This is Cook. We're back online and ready to kick some Nexus ass. The battle turned as Earth's defenders rallied. Human ingenuity paired with Hazari firepower began to push back the Nexus assault. As the immediate crisis passed, Cook knew this was only the beginning. The real test of humanity's drive, and their uneasy alliance was yet to come. The ship's alarms blared as Stephen Cook fought to maintain consciousness. Air hissed out of the command compartment, his lungs burning with each ragged breath. "Auxiliary power to EMP generators now," he barked. His fingers flew over the controls, rerouting every scrap of remaining energy. The ship groaned as the electromagnetic pulse built up, then released in a blinding flash. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the virus warnings blinked out one by one. "We're clear of the Nexus code," Stephen announced, "but our systems are fried." He turned to the handful of crew members trapped with him. "We need to repressurize from the atmosphere. It's risky, but it's our only shot." Stephen wrestled with the airlock controls, sweat beading on his brow as he calculated the precise timing. Too early or too late meant death. Venting in 3, 2, 1. The ship bucked violently as air rushed in. Metal screamed, threatening to tear apart. Stephen's vision blurred, but he held on, slamming the airlock shut at the last possible second. They gasped in relief as oxygen flooded the compartment, but it was short-lived. A thunderous impact rocked the ship, then another, and another. "Singularity missiles," the sensor officer shouted. "They're locked on." "Fire maneuvering thrusters," Stephen ordered. "We're going for atmospheric re-entry." The ship lurched as they fired what little propulsion remained. Stephen's hands flew over the controls, jettisoning every non-essential component. "Brace for re-entry," he yelled as the hull began to glow red-hot. A deafening roar filled the ship as they plummeted towards Earth. G-forces crushed them into their seats. Warning lights flashed everywhere. Suddenly, explosions lit up the sky around them. The railguns had taken out the missiles, but the shockwave sent them tumbling. "We've lost control," Stephen shouted over the din. "Impact imminent. Brace for crash landing." The Ukrainian countryside rushed up to meet them as the crew held on for dear life, their fate now in the hands of chance and the strength of their hull. The ship's hull screamed as it tore apart, sending shards of superheated metal flying through the command compartment. Stephen Cook's eyes watered from the acrid smoke as he stumbled towards the escape pods, dragging 2 semi-conscious crewmen behind him. "Move! Now!" he bellowed, shoving them into the nearest pod. His fingers flew over the launch controls, inputting the last desperate vectors that might give them a chance at survival. The pod ejected with a violent jolt. Through the viewport, Stephen watched in horror as 2 other pods disintegrated in the plasma sheath surrounding the ship. But the third, carrying Jennings and Holt, managed to break free, tumbling away on an erratic course. Stephen had no time to feel relief. The ship buckled around him, containment fields failing as the inferno outside breached the hull. Searing heat assaulted his skin. He lunged for the final pod, but a support beam crashed down, pinning his leg. Trapped, Stephen could only watch as his ship plummeted towards Earth. The Ukrainian countryside rushed up to meet him, a patchwork of fields and forests growing ever larger. In his final moments, he thought of Jennings and Holt, praying they'd somehow survived. The impact came in a blinding flash. The ship's remnants slammed into the Earth with apocalyptic force, carving out massive craters and sending shockwaves rippling for miles. Miles away, Jennings and Holt's pod spiraled out of control, all systems dead. They clutched their restraints, bracing for impact. "It's been an honor," Holt gasped. Jennings nodded grimly. "See you on the other side." The pod smashed through layers of rock and metal, finally crashing to a halt in a cavernous underground chamber. For long moments, silence reigned. Then, groaning, Jennings pushed open the crumpled hatch. "We're alive?" Holt mumbled, blinking blood from his eyes. They stumbled out, legs shaky, only to freeze in terror. Surrounding them were rows upon rows of inactive Nexus war machines. The horrifying realization dawned. They'd landed in the belly of the beast. "We need to move," Jennings hissed, scanning for any sign of activity. "Find a way out before—" A low hum filled the air. Lights flickered to life on the nearest robotic assembly rigs. With agonizing slowness, they turned towards the 2 humans. Holt fumbled for his sidearm. Got any bright ideas? Jennings's eyes darted around the facility, searching for anything they could use. Yeah, run! They sprinted between the towering war machines as the assembly rigs whirred to life behind them. Sparks flew as robotic arms began to move, constructing new horrors even as they pursued the intruders. Above ground, the battle for Earth raged on. Primus watched from his command ship as Cook's former flagship burned up in the atmosphere, a fiery streak across the night sky. The human leader is dead, he announced, mandibles clicking in satisfaction. I am assuming full command of our forces. His subordinates snapped to attention. Primus's voice dripped with cold certainty as he issued his orders. Initiate Operation Firebreak. We will burn out the Nexus infection at any expense to these pitiful human settlements. Across the globe, Hazari ships unleashed their fury. The skies over southern England lit up with nuclear fire. The Korean peninsula vanished beneath a hail of plasma bombardment. The Strait of Malacca boiled as antimatter warheads detonated in its waters. Billions perished in an instant. As the onslaught continued, pockets of human resistance began to form. They watched in horror as their alien allies laid waste to their homeworld. Among the survivors, whispers spread of Jennings and Holt, the last of Cook's inner circle. If they lived, they might be humanity's only hope. In the shadows, these resistance cells began to gather, humans who'd lost everything to the Nexus and now to the Hazari, defectors from Primus's forces who couldn't stomach the slaughter. They prepared for a new war, one that would determine the very survival of the human race. And deep beneath the earth, in a Nexus facility humming with alien machinery, Jennings and Holt fought for their lives, unaware that the fate of humanity now rested on their shoulders.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.